Take a look at this timeline. Between 2018 and 2025, the New Zealand government spent 32 million taxpayer dollars on a single biometric upgrade. By the time they finally shut it down, that massive investment had resulted in zero output. The consequences are visible at the border right now. Because this project failed, Immigration New Zealand is still relying on a clunky, unstable algorithm from 2012 to verify identities and keep the country secure. In June 2026, during Scrutiny Week, Immigration Minister Erica Stanford stepped in front of the cameras, delivering a scathing takedown of her own ministry. Her defense was simple. She claimed she had been ambushed. Stanford told the public that rogue officials had kept her in the dark, deliberately withheld documents, and fed her complete fiction to hide the project's collapse. But internal records raise questions about when the minister knew it was failing and why it continued long after red flags appeared. The project began with a failure of oversight in 2018. Officials launched this entire biometric upgrade without ever receiving ministerial sign-off. In 2020, the team made a disastrous shift. They moved to an off-the-shelf software model without checking if it was compatible with existing systems. The upgrade immediately hit a wall. It was plagued by technical defects, missed milestones, and skyrocketing costs. With warnings visible to anyone tracking the project's progress, the loss of $32 million was a predictable outcome of years of ignored technical failures. An independent review reveals how this was hidden. Officials used creative accounting to deliberately bypass cabinet scrutiny. The mechanism? Splitting the project into two separate parts to keep individual costs below the threshold triggering mandatory oversight. Hiding the money from the top of the government was only one half of the strategy. They also had to deal with the people inside the ministry who knew it was failing. There were staff on the team who raised alarms about the project's viability. When they spoke up, they were deliberately removed from the project to prevent their warnings from reaching leadership. These two tactics, masking the true cost and suppressing internal warnings, built a system that shielded leadership from the consequences of their own project's failure. The minister's claim of an ambush relies on her being uninformed, but the paper trail from April 2024 shows exactly what was on her desk. In April of that year, Stanford received a 2023 independent review. That document was explicit. It questioned whether the project would ever deliver and asked whether it should even continue. At the same time, the ministry's chief executive sent her an apology letter, admitting officials provided misleading information about the project's true status. Despite having this evidence in hand, Stanford made a choice. She invoked the sunk cost fallacy, the idea that they had already spent too much to stop, and continued writing checks for another 19 months. The millions spent after April 2024 were not the result of a minister being misled. They were the result of a decision to keep funding a project that had already been branded as a failure. During her 2026 press conference, Stanford announced that Public Service Commissioner Sir Brian Roche would lead an investigation into the ministry's conduct, but the terms of that inquiry are limited. Roche stated that his mission is to restore the confidence of ministers in their officials, a goal that prioritizes political relationships over accountability to the taxpayers. As this Herald report shows, before his investigation even began, Roche stated he did not see the chief executive as directly accountable. Also, the identities of officials involved are kept secret. The report contains a list of names, but as shown here, it is redacted. Roche expects the investigation to take up to 4 months. By the time it concludes, the daily media cycle will have moved on, making it unlikely that any significant consequences will be made public. In Te Ao Maori, the concept of utu refers to the restoration of balance. That balance cannot be restored when the Crown appoints its own officials to investigate itself while keeping the evidence hidden from the people it serves. This failure isn't just a matter of history. At immigration counters, like the one in this photo, officials are forced to use the outdated, manual systems the failed project was supposed to replace. And the stakes are getting higher. The same ministry is managing a new identity system upgrade. The $32 million wasted on the last project is tiny compared to the $343 million budget for this new system, already rated as a high-risk project. Because the names of those involved in the previous failure are redacted, there is no way for the public to know if the same officials are currently managing this new, much larger investment. This pattern of waste violates the duty of kaitiakitanga, or guardianship. This principle requires the government to protect collective resources, yet here, those resources have been poured into a void with no accountability. While the minister's public display centers on past mistakes, the lack of systemic reform ensures that the same cycle of secrecy is being built into the next generation of technology. Only this time, the price tag has increased tenfold.